who the Pharisees were and why they were so significant in the time of Jesus. We're about to embark on a journey back to a critical era in religious history. Picture this, a group known as the Pharisees, a prominent religious sect of Judaism that existed during the time of Jesus. They were a force to be reckoned with, wielding considerable influence and power. The Pharisees were known for their strict adherence to the law of Moses, which encompassed not only the Ten Commandments but also hundreds of other rules and regulations. But it didn't stop there. They also followed the traditions of the elders, customs passed down through generations that they held in equal regard to the written law. This devotion to law and tradition shaped their way of life, their decisions, and their interactions with others, particularly with a certain carpenter from Nazareth. So these Pharisees, who were they in the eyes of Jesus? Let's dive into this fascinating exploration. Jesus' first encounters with the Pharisees were not exactly cordial. Why was that, you might ask? Well, see this. Picture the scene. Jesus, a charismatic preacher with a fast-growing following, meets the Pharisees, a group of religious leaders known for their strict adherence to Jewish law and traditions. These encounters were not marked by shared theological insights or friendly debates. Instead, they were fraught with tension and disagreement. One of the earliest encounters occurred when the Pharisees questioned Jesus about his disciples. They wanted to know why his followers were not adhering to the traditions of the elders, such as the ceremonial washing of hands before meals. Now, these traditions were deeply ingrained in Pharisaic law, and were seen as a direct reflection of one's piety. Jesus' response, however, was far from what they expected. He did not apologize or promise to enforce these traditions. Instead, he challenged the Pharisees, questioning their focus on external rituals over the purity of the heart. He pointed out that what comes out of a person is what defiles them, not what goes in, highlighting the importance of inner purity over outward displays of righteousness. Another instance saw the Pharisees challenge Jesus for healing on the Sabbath, a day of rest according to Jewish law. Jesus, however, responded by asking whether it was lawful to do good or evil on the Sabbath, to save life or to kill. His response emphasized the spirit of the law over its letter, a concept that was largely foreign to the Pharisees. These initial encounters were more than just disagreements on religious practices. They exposed a fundamental difference in understanding and practicing faith. On one side, the Pharisees with their rigid adherence to the laws and traditions. On the other, Jesus emphasizing the importance of love, mercy, and compassion over ritualistic practices. These encounters set the stage for the subsequent interactions between Jesus and the Pharisees, painting a vivid picture of the conflict that was to come. The stage was set, the characters were in place, and the drama was just beginning to unfold. Jesus had a lot to say about the Pharisees. One of his main criticisms was their hypocrisy. Now let's delve into some of the instances where Jesus called out the Pharisees for their duality. The Pharisees, you see, were known for their outward display of piety. They were the ones with the loudest prayers, the longest tassels, and the most prominent seats in the synagogues. They loved to be seen as holy and devout. But Jesus saw right through this facade. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, Jesus called the Pharisees whitewashed tombs. A rather harsh metaphor, don't you think? But it perfectly encapsulates the hypocrisy he was pointing out. A whitewashed tomb, after all, looks clean and beautiful on the outside, but inside it's full of bones and all manner of decay. Similarly, the Pharisees looked pure and holy on the outside, but their hearts, their inner selves, were full of corruption and spiritual decay. Jesus didn't stop there. He also called them out for their selective obedience to the law. They were meticulous about tithing, even going so far as to tithe the smallest herbs from their gardens. But at the same time, they neglected the weightier matters of the law, such as justice and mercy. It was all about image for them, not about true obedience to God's commands. The Pharisees were masters of saying one thing and doing another. They imposed heavy burdens on others, burdens they themselves wouldn't lift a finger to bear. They were quick to judge others, but slow to examine their own hearts. To Jesus, this was the epitome of hypocrisy. So you see, when Jesus criticized the Pharisees, he wasn't just nitpicking. He was pointing out a deep-seated problem, a problem that went far beyond the Pharisees themselves. It was a problem of the heart, a problem of hypocrisy. Jesus was not done with his criticism of the Pharisees just yet. Jesus didn't just criticize the Pharisees for their hypocrisy, he also called them out for neglecting the more important aspects of the law. Picture this, a group of meticulously dressed individuals, inspecting every detail of the law, yet missing out on the bigger picture. This is what Jesus pointed out about the Pharisees. They were so consumed with minor details, they overlooked the very essence of the law: justice, mercy, and faith. In the Gospel of Matthew, we find a striking example. Jesus says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness." This was not just a random observation, it was a well-aimed criticism at the Pharisees' misplaced priorities. They were so engrossed in the tiniest details of the law, like tithing even the smallest of their spices, that they completely missed out on the weightier matters. Justice, for example, is a fundamental principle of the law. It's about ensuring fairness, treating others with respect, and standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. The Pharisees, however, were more concerned with their own status and power, often at the expense of justice. Mercy, another cornerstone of the law, was similarly neglected. Mercy is about compassion, about understanding another's pain and responding with kindness. Yet the Pharisees were often harsh and judgmental, showing little mercy to those they deemed sinners. And faith. Faith is about trust, about belief in the divine and in the goodness of others. But the Pharisees' actions showed a lack of faith. They were quick to judge and slow to trust, often doubting the sincerity of others' faith. In essence, Jesus was pointing out that the Pharisees had lost sight of the true purpose of the law. They were focused on the letter of the law, but had forgotten its spirit. The law was not just about rules and rituals, it was about justice, mercy, and faith, principles that the Pharisees, in their obsession with details, had neglected. So Jesus' criticism of the Pharisees was quite comprehensive, wasn't it? So, what was Jesus' final verdict on the Pharisees? Let's dive right into the real deal. So when Jesus laid it out, the Pharisees were like the poster kids for being hypocrites. Picture this: they were all about sticking to the rules, but totally missed the whole vibe behind them. They'd go all out, tithing every little herb in their gardens, but when it came to things like justice, mercy, and faith, they were like, nah, not my problem. Imagine straining out a tiny gnat from their wine glass, but then gulping down a whole camel. That's how Jesus painted the picture to show how messed up their priorities were. Jesus saw through their facade of righteousness. He recognized that their focus was not on serving God and the community, but on maintaining their own power and prestige. They were more concerned about appearing righteous before others than about truly being righteous in the eyes of God. This was the essence of their hypocrisy. And it wasn't a silent observation. Jesus openly warned his followers about the Pharisees. He didn't mince words. He cautioned them not to follow the example of these religious leaders who talked the talk, but didn't walk the walk. He urged them to look beyond the surface, to discern between genuine commitment to God's law and mere performance for public acclaim. This wasn't just a critique of some religious group 2 millennia ago. It's a timeless caution for all of us. It's a call to examine our own lives, our own actions. Are we, like the Pharisees, focusing on the externals and neglecting the heart of the matter? Are we talking a good game but failing to live up to our own words? These are the questions that Jesus' final verdict on the Pharisees compels us to ask ourselves. And that, dear viewers, is the Pharisees according to Jesus. A stark reminder of the dangers of hypocrisy and neglecting the true spirit of the law.